Hi everyone, this is Tina with Overall Adventures. Thank you so much for joining me for this winter journaling prompt video. This is going to be broken up into 4 sections and 4 different ways that you could journal. So the first way is documentation, then we have reflection, and then we have creating or creation and dreaming. So, our first section on documentation really focuses on capturing the facts, capturing the stats, and capturing the kind of day to day reality of your winter. So, you could look at stats. So, right, you could look at, inches or of snow you've had. You could look at temperature. You could look at temperature changes compared to other years on those days. You could also do, obviously, always local news and events. And you could look at winter history in your area. So, what is the makeup of your town or city, and what are some things that have historically happened in winter? You could also look at some nature journaling here. So that's whether that's drawing or writing. But one idea I had was to learn about the animals and plants and indigenous species in your area and really learn how they do winter. So not just how they survive, but how they thrive and what are their strategies and how can you maybe capture some of that symbolically in your own life. The next category is reflection, which is obviously more inward looking, and how winter can kind of bring us inward. So my first question is, what is winter typically like for you? And what are your associations with winter? I think a lot of people have, unfortunately, negative associations with winter. But what have yours been in the past, and what are they now? Another question is, how are you hibernating? Oh, I love this. So what are you doing to hibernate and to turn inward this winter? Another one is, what brings you warmth? What brings you chill? And what brings you cold? So interpret that as you will. What emotions do you associate with winter? And then you could do a head, heart, spirit check-in. This could be an interesting thing to do seasonally. So seasonally, asking yourself, how does my head feel? How does my heart feel? And how does my spirit feel? And I think it would be kind of cool to compare those. And another one is, what emotions come up when you think about cold versus when you think about warmth and heat and fire? And what I love about winter is there is this extreme contrast between the cold and the warmth. And I think we appreciate things like fire and cocoa even more because of the cold. Our next category is creating. So I always talk about odes. I love odes. I think you can write an ode to winter, an ode to fire, an ode to cocoa, an ode to sledding, an ode to cold toes. An ode is a praise poem, so praising and celebrating that bit or that tiny little thing that's in our lives. Obviously, poetry as well. I think you could also make a playlist of songs that remind you of this season or remind you of winter. I think you could also take a song, instead of just writing something from scratch, you could take a song that you love or a song that reminds you of winter and rewrite the lyrics and try to make them fit your perspective on winter. The next one would be writing from the perspective of either winter or snow or a bear or a bird, a tree, a plant, or a fire. What would the fireplace say if it could talk? What would wood say if it could talk? What would, fresh snowflakes say versus snow that's been sitting on, the earth for a couple of weeks? So giving that a voice. And the last one would be this kind of, and this is just really my own interests here, but I'm fascinated, like I said, this contrast about this fire and ice, or this heat and cold. And I feel like I notice it even more in the winter than I do in the summer. I appreciate the warmth because I've been cold. So I thought maybe a poem that expresses that kind of contrast could be really interesting, or even just kind of doing a writing meditation on that topic itself and this contrast, and how does this contrast really make us feel? How does that impact us? What is that doing in our bodies? What is that doing in our spirit? So that's just something, I don't know, that's been on my mind that I'd like to experiment with for sure. And the last category is dreaming. So one way to use journaling can be for visioning or dreaming or manifesting and kind of crying out in a form of a prayer. So one way I thought for a winter prompt could be, what's your ideal hibernation look like? That could be location, that could be feelings, that could be, yeah, space, smell, touch. What does hibernation look like for you ideally? Then another one would be, what are the pros and cons of hibernation? And what do you most want this winter? And how do you appreciate this season already? And how can you appreciate this season of life even more? And one of my favorite parts about winter is this idea of slowing down. So, how can you slow down even more? I think about the trees just kind of steadying and still working and still growing, but just in a slower way. So, how can you slow down even more? And then, of course, how can you prepare for spring? So, we can look forward to new growth and new life and, green again. And what can you do now to prepare for that coming season? Thank you so much for joining me. I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Peace.